Hey everybody, Justin with Service and Sacrifice. We have another episode here with Leah. Do you want to give a quick intro to yourself?
My name is Leah. I am a military brat, and both my parents served for career terms, and that's my connection to the military community. Now I spend my time advocating for veterans and working in veteran nonprofits.
I originally reached out to you on TikTok, which I'm semi new to, because my FYP for you page is like 98% military talk. My algorithm is just completely military. And I'm sure you've seen this too in this space, but the majority of people discussing military related topics, I feel like can't like civilly talk about it, whether
Yeah.
it's politics get brought up, where you deployed, how long you served, if you got medically retired, whatever. I see a lot of people just like angry in the comments on the videos. And I came across your page, and every video that I watched, at least, you weren't like freaking out in the comments or whatever. So,
Yeah.
like, how long have you been doing this for? And like, how are you able to present yourself calmly, unlike a lot of
I
others?
don't know. Every day at home was like a freaking was warfare, so I just became the peacemaker. No, so I've been doing this particular like talking about military stuff on social media for a little over a year now regularly. Um I joined the civilian world for the first time when I was like 20, and then I'm 33 now. And then I went into, oh my gosh, it might have been later than that. Maybe it was like 21, 22. Went to school for social work, and I joke and say that I went to human training because like I had the same problems you guys have. Like I'm too direct, I'm too literal, I'm too harsh, freaking everything. And it was so I went to school for social work for various reasons because you know it was interesting to me. There's a lot to it, but I learned a lot of my communication skills, conflict resolution. You learn mediation. You learn all sorts of stuff relating to humans and how to interact with humans well in social work. And you also learn how to advocate with that. And part of that advocacy is standing in the fire. So you have to be willing to take heat. So you just learn to deal with it. And I kind of laugh, like it helps that my dad did time as a drill sergeant and he was antagonistic at home. You just get used to it and it's hard to rile me up. So
Yeah, interesting. It's funny you mentioned like you had to kind of go through a similar transition because I'm sure you've heard not only from your parents, but a lot of veterans say like when you get out, whether it's cute dog, whether it's
go say hi. I don't know. He's bad at
was that
popping up. There he is.
is that a mix?
Yep, he's a cattle dog mixed with a pit bull.
Very cute.
Yes.
Like I was saying, I feel like most vets, whether you spend 3 years or 12 years or whatever, you get out and you kind of don't realize how much you need to like tone down the firmness when you speak to someone. And it's not even meant to be like insulting or demeaning by any means, but like you just speak very direct in the military. Like, this is what I'm telling you to do. This is how I expect it to get done. And I actually mentioned in one of my previous episodes that was pretty difficult for me when I first entered corporate because I would tell my peers, like, hey, you have to do this. And they'd be like, oh, that, like you said, that kind of stirred. And I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know, like, I
Doing it
don't
full
see,
knife hand, like you're just
right?
all in,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I feel like, especially if you do like 10 or 15 plus years, it's probably very hard to reverse that. But I guess I'll give you a quick intro to myself because you've only seen like my TikTok page. But I did 3 years in the Army, 2010 to 2013, as a 13 Mike, which is MLRS in Oklahoma, which is like the main base for artillery.
Okay.
Multiple launch rocket systems. We shot rockets out of this like tracked vehicle. Pretty cool. And I was at a nonprofit for a year
Hmm.
because I know you mentioned you're currently at a nonprofit, so that's pretty neat. And I started talking about all this stuff just because, as I'm sure you've seen, like a lot of veterans and even active duty that are like 12 months out that I've seen on social media, and they're like, I'm definitely getting out. And there's just like not a ton of support. Like there's the TAPS program now, which used to be ACAP when I got out. And it's like, okay, right? Like they tell you, get a job, get private health insurance, file your VA claims. But other than that, like the second you drive off base, like that's it. There's no support.
How about how to
um,
use a bank? Like just like there's like a million things.
yeah, when I got out, all I had was my military star card, like that gold card you could use at the PX, which I definitely didn't pay off for like years, but that's another story. Do you want to briefly talk about the nonprofit and like what you do, what you guys do there, and why it started?
Sure. The org was started by a guy named Rob Hevlin. He's a Marine Corps veteran, and he got out of the Marines, and he had like a similar experience with like not having much support. He went through a lot of struggles with mental health. He would be happy to come on and tell his full story, but basically he wanted to create a space where veterans could feel like at home and also kind of get some interaction with veteran friendly civilians. So like I'm in there and you can't shock me, veteran friendly civilians, and kind of give them a space to find that camaraderie again and get the support that they desperately need, because there's mental health support out there, like seeing a therapist, but a lot of the therapists that are out there don't have any interaction with people like in the military or, as friends, which is totally different than, in a professional setting. So it's just kind of an awkward space to navigate. So he wanted to create a space where they could go hang out. The other things that he does is connect them with resources that they need. Each week he does a mental health stream on Twitch where people are allowed to come and they talk and they do like share their stories for the week, what's going on with them, stuff like that. And then he also does resource connection. So he'll like shout out other nonprofits, like do fundraisers for them where all the money goes to them. Like we don't get anything. All the money goes to them. He will, have them on for interviews, stuff like that. So it really is a community that is built, and they have a heavy hitters project. So the goal is to be there like by your side while you're going through whatever you're going through.
I didn't ask you, did you become licensed in social work?
No, so I actually went to school. I've completed all my coursework, and then I took a big long hiatus. So I still have to do my internship. So I am not a social worker right now.
Yeah, I was
Thank you
going
for
to
the
ask you if, yeah, no problem. I was going to ask you if you had any interest in like potentially doing, I don't even know if you can do that for the VA. Is that a thing or?
So for a while, I had wanted to work because, okay, there's 3 levels of social work. There's like micro, which is one-on-one. There's meso, which is small communities and like family systems and stuff like that. And then there's macro, which is organizational and like policy and all that stuff. So I like macro social work. And I think that probably has to do with my mom being in logistics. That might be. So I like the big
Okay.
stuff. And I had thought about possibly one day working for a company like that, but I personally want to kind of avoid the things that we have in place now, if that makes sense. So, yeah, I don't want to like get controversial on your podcast, but
No, it's
yeah, I want to see if we can do something new.
yeah, definitely. I know a bunch of people that have gone to behavioral health at the VA, and I've been using the VA exclusively for like 4 years. So I've seen some flaws that can definitely get corrected. And I know that the people work there, like they have to do the treatments a certain way by like the policies of like the VA, and whether or not they think it's the most efficient, it's their job, right? I've spoken to a lot of veterans who, just did one contract, didn't see anything crazy, but just need to talk to somebody, to the veterans that have deployed to combat, and like their experiences have not been as satisfactory as they would have liked.
Right. It
Yeah.
kind of just leans down to, or boils down to, the instability of the VA, just because you can get a new president, you can get a new whoever, and then everything is just a nightmare. And that is stressful because you're already trying to navigate a system you don't fully understand. And then, they are not. I see a big issue with what is called in social work cultural competency. So meaning, okay, well, they serve veterans, but a lot of them don't know anything about veterans, and so it's like awkward. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't, you don't mesh well, and it feels uncomfortable. So the biggest thing for me is the instability. Like I would prefer to have a new system that's not influenced by the government, but the VA is a very important resource. Like it's needed. If they are willing to make improvements, that's awesome. That would be great.
Yeah. It would be.
It would be awesome.
So there's one specific topic I wanted to bring up, which I think you were replying to someone's comment. I don't remember the original video, but basically, like someone was asking about the VFW and why they're not super popular now or becoming less popular. And somehow the conversation spiraled off into like different generational veterans. So, like super old ones who were in Korea, the guys who are between that and they're like 50 years old, and I'm mid 30s. So, like, everyone my age was like right at the surge of Iraq. And now the younger generation like don't get along as much as people probably would think.
Mhm.
And then like collectively all of those veteran groups somehow have different issues with the current active duty. And I really like your video because like that thought had been in the back of my mind, like kind of brewing, but I couldn't like word it well for a long time. And I see the comments, right? Like I like to read the comments on people's videos, and like you can tell I'll click on someone's profile picture and it's like a 60-year-old vet and he's just like hashing some 19-year-old. Um and like I try to view I try to be moderate in how I like view active duty, but I've only been out 12 years now, and there's a lot has changed in 12 years, like
Mhm.
a ton. But you kind of want to talk about like your rebuttal to that, like why you feel the groups are not like collectively like, hey, we all served, we're one family.
Yeah. Well, there is, oh my gosh, there's so many observations. This could be very long. Let me try to organize it in my brain. So, first of all, there's just your standard. We human beings, as we age, we have different value systems. We have different beliefs. The younger ones are like, and this is consistent throughout history. Like, if you go back to like the founding fathers, you will see that Hamilton was like wanting to just mess everything up and like do crazy stuff. And then the younger ones are like, no, bro, chill. We got to do things in a measured way or whatever. So there's just that kind of resistance to change as human beings get over. So that's part of learning in social work. You have to learn about human growth and development, including cognition. So happens all the time. Then the military community is a community built on conflict. I mean, literally, that is what they do. So it is very easy for, heated passions, like very strong opinions to be, thrown around, and for people to struggle to handle those. And then the massive changes in society over time. So there's like people alive today that were in like segregated units or units that like didn't allow females in the military, like to be in most places. And like my mom will tell me stories about how she said, when she was just joining as a as an airman, they were like not interested in females at all. Like they thought that she was gonna quit, that she was gonna get pregnant and leave, that she was gonna, not be able to pass boot camp. And she excelled at everything, kicked everyone's butts, and drove them nuts. But that attitude, those people are still around. So and then younger guys in general, I would say, like, and this is all in line with that value system thing. They are a lot more kind of like, yeah, dude, like women are fine, like it's not a big deal. Why are you freaking out? Just so many different different value clashes and culture clashes as we get older.
Well said. I mean, there's so many issues like micro and macro. Like even when I joined in 2010, women were not in combat roles. So if you worked with any females, which I didn't because I was in artillery, they were either medics, supply, be like cooks, any MOS in the hospital, like assistant, like medical assistant type jobs. But they weren't in like the infantry or anything. Also in 2010, there were certain policies around who could or could not join the military, which changed in 2011. But by the time I was getting out, like literally, I got out, I saved a bunch of terminal leave, and I got out 60 days early in mid December 2012. And as I was getting out, my buddy was like, hey, did you hear there's the first female basic training class that's going to go into advanced training for our MOS?
Mhm.
And I was like, what are you talking about? There's no women in our
Yeah.
combat job. But they just passed a law. So now like women were joining the infantry and everything. So like it was weird to have that switch because all my buddies that got out a few years later, like they worked before women couldn't do it. And now both sexes could do it. There's a lot of like really, really high ranking people that have been in for like 25 plus years who probably in the next 10 years, all those people will retire and you'll probably see another big like culture shift. Same concept. I try to relate it back to corporate where like right now, my age group has the same like VPs and SVPs that are like old cranky dudes that are like, millennials aren't working hard enough. You have to
Right.
work 60. And very soon they're all going to retire and hopefully like we'll get some more reasonable people in charge that are like, hey, work-life balance is important.
No, and it's funny because if we think about it, right? Like I think I made the joke. I was like, what do you think how do you think knights would think about us like nowadays? They would think we are the biggest wimps. Like even they would think that of people back in the Civil War. It's like, what, you're using a gun, not a sword, like, or your bare hands? What's wrong with you? So it is the kind of progression of technology, of, methods, of ideas. And when that happens, there's an adjustment period. But it's always interesting if you kind of pause and reflect on, how things have changed over time. And, there's a lot of guys I see like back in Nam or whatever, they're just like, or just even, Desert Storm, they're just like, you guys are such wimps nowadays. You don't have to do this or that. And it's like, okay, but how do you think the people before you felt about you? They probably thought you were like the biggest, weenie ever. So that's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, and it's literally like I feel like this rotation of back in my day it was so much harder is like every 10 years in the military, which isn't even that much time in like your lifespan, right? Like 10 years. But in the military, like when I joined in 2010, all of my NCOs, so my leadership, were the dudes who joined like right into 2001, right? And they saw like the worst of it, and they were like they were super cranky, and they definitely had a lot of undiagnosed PTSD, and like they were tough. But their NCOs before them, that time period, like 10 years before that, they were talking about like I don't know if your parents have ever told you. I think it's called like behind the Connex, where like people like physically hit each other as like discipline.
In the tree line, in the sand pit. Yeah, different names
Yeah,
for it.
yeah, they were physically hitting each other, and that stopped like pretty close to right before I joined because nobody ever like hurt each other. But I was like, oh crap, like that's kind of crazy. And they were like, you guys, you don't know how good you have it. Like we used to get our asses whooped, and I'm like, okay, like that doesn't mean it was better back then. And I briefly mentioned to you before we started recording that like I feel like it's ingrained in me, like those, even though I was only in for 3 years, like it was so impactful that while I'm scrolling social media and I see some like 19-year-old or 20-year-old doing something dumb, I'm like, oh, that's so dumb. Why are they doing that in uniform? But like realistically, when I was 19, I was probably doing stupid stuff in uniform too.
Oh, all of you do, yeah. I've seen several generations at this point. All of you do. That's like when one guy was talking. He was like giving this kid shit on another social media. He was like, oh, you complain about anything these days. And I said, he was just like being so rude to this guy. And the guy wasn't even complaining. He was just saying that he was out of regs on his haircut. And so his drill sergeant like told him to go cut his hair. And so he did it. That was it. But for whatever reason, that triggered something in that man, saying like complaining about leadership or something. And I said something to the effect of like, yes, because we know that every other generation of service members has just silently and happily gone along with everything their chain of command says. Of course that's not true. Like constant complaints. It's just under your breath and you don't want them to hear you. Like that's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, absolutely. And I see a ton of current active duty members who are like, they're doing something off post and they're in their uniform and they're like, oh, this older veteran like tried to correct me. Like, I don't know, my hand was in my pocket or like my hat wasn't perfectly straight. And they're just like annoyed because they're like, dude, your time has passed. Like, just stop. And it's tough because like, I definitely don't comment anything on those videos because like when I see soldiers doing things in uniform, I'm like, oh, you're not doing that right. Or like their hair will be crazy or something. And I'm just like, dude, like get a haircut. But at the same point, I'm like, why do you like I don't care, like really, but it's just I remember them telling me all the time, like every morning they would like rub the side of your head and they'd be like, oh, you gotta get a haircut. It's too long and it's like an inch, right? It's like not even an inch.
Yeah.
But it's also hard because like I'm only 15 years older than some of these like 20-year-olds joining. But then there's the age group who they're currently retiring, who are like, I've done 20 or 22 years, and they're like mid 50s. And I feel like anyone in that age group has a really tough time, like just kind of letting it go. I don't know if it was more difficult back then, or if you serve 20 years, it's like your whole adult life, and they have to comment and they have to be like, you guys don't know how easy it was. And it's tough, dude, because I see these old like Vietnam vets or these dudes who joined in like 98 who went to Afghanistan like 3 times. And I'm like, you don't want to make their opinions not validated. but at the same time, it's like, it's a new military now. You know what I mean?
And I'm sympathetic to both sides of that issue. First, you have, the individual. I personally think it's wrong for anyone to say, like, just like, get over it. You're not in anymore. The military is an extremely impactful part of your life if you make it through boot camp, because the psychological process that goes on in there is intended to make you an entirely different human being. Not entirely, but change a lot about you, including, very fundamental things. So it's designed to last. And that kind of regimen is not something that's just going to go away. And it will probably never go away, some parts of it. And that's okay, as long as it's not like infringing on the, life of another human being. And I kind of wish that people would just like understand that about veterans. Like, the biggest thing that I kind of bring up is, feel free to look up this term. It's called acculturative stress. It's what happens to immigrants when they come to a whole new. So I equate someone coming out of the military to you taking someone from America and just putting them in Japan and going figure it out. So there's a million different stress. Obviously, you speak English, but it's a different kind of English. And it's just like, you have to learn new systems. You have to learn a new language in a way. You have to learn entirely new social norms. And what was really actively drilled into you is now not only perceived to some as like not valuable. So like having a perfectly freaking, tailored uniform, everything like that. In some instances, the manner of speaking and the just different norms can even be offensive. It's an extremely stressful thing to go from, these are all good things, these are all expected things, these are all required things, to now all that's different. So I don't think it's right for anyone to say that to a veteran, even if they're active duty. I have gently reminded people in the past, like active duty people in the past, like, hey, this is going to be you someday. So, you might want to be mindful, because you're going to feel that way when you leave to some extent. So yeah, I personally wish there was more support and like attempted camaraderie, but it is very difficult. And then on the flip side, you have the younger guys, and they're just trying to serve, and they're like getting all this negative feedback from people that they would expect to get support from, and stuff like that. So I can definitely see the frustration on both sides of that equation.
Yeah, and I try to put myself in their shoes, right? And like when I was 19, 20 and I was in, if some veteran who was late 30s or mid 50s or whatever was trying to give me advice or correct me or something, I'd probably be like whatever, dude, like let me just do my thing. If they tried to tell you like, hey, think of it this way, I'd be like, hey, the military is totally different than it was 10 years ago, because it just keeps changing. But at the same point, like these people who are currently in will be out eventually one day, maybe a couple years, maybe a decade, and like the shock is going to be there. That's kind of why I'm trying to like talk to people and reach out on my platforms, just to help them transition a bit, because nobody like reached out to me.
Mhm.
Social media was not nearly as big back in 2013 as it is now. Like I joke all the time, when I joined in 2010, Instagram just launched in 2010.
Right.
So like nobody was like taking pictures and stuff. Like there was nothing to take pictures of, like us just sitting around. Like
Dude,
that
remember
was
we used to have those freaking little scrolly cameras? That's how we used to have to take pictures.
Yeah, so like now it's so interesting for me to see veterans posting like everything. Like soldiers posting everything. They're in the field, they're, taking videos of them sitting on helicopters. I'm like, that's sick. Especially like when they go live, like either like on TikTok, and they're like sitting at their desk and they're just like live streaming, and I see people commenting like, this is what you do all day, you just sit at your desk and live stream. But it's no different than it was 10 years ago, because we were just sitting at our desks, not live streaming,
Right.
like just talking.
I'm I'm pretty sure I think I heard at one point that they're encouraged to some extent to do that, so long as they are appropriate, like, not being D-bags, because it makes people interested in being in the military. So, it's kind of a little sales thing. But yeah, I worry about that sometimes, though. I'm just like, is that safe? Like, shouldn't they not be, disclosing their location? That always weirds me out when I see that. It stresses me out. Like, did those people forget that a lot of the times, like, there's a job to just stand there? There's jobs that just require you to stand there in the military. So just kind of something people do.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, I would say like at least 3 days out of the week, we got done doing whatever random tasks we had to do by like 2 right? Like we were done because we woke up at like 5. So we were done by 2. And then at least 95% of the time, you couldn't just go home. I mean, some units now do that, but usually you just have to wait there till like 5, 6 p.m. before your commander was like, okay, like I'm done doing whatever it is I'm doing. You guys can go home now. Yeah, I see soldiers like live streaming in their car for hours. This one time, I went on the other day and I was just scrolling and like I came back 4 hours later and this soldier was still like in the same parking spot. It's interesting. Like sometimes depends what unit you have. I tell all my buddies this. I know some dudes that are in super chill units, their experience is great. Like my experience was kind of meh.
Right. So you mean you had like a negative experience in the military or just boring?
Kind of both.
Okay.
Like, I think it really depends on your leadership. And when I first joined, I guess just to give you some insight, like the first 12 months that I got out of training, I really liked it. I was like, this is sick. I want to be really good. This is a cool opportunity.
Mhm.
You know, this was my first like non minimum wage income. So I was like, it's pretty good. It's okay, right? For like 19. But then leadership changed after a year and it just like plummeted my morale. Like these guys made it very obvious they did not care. Soldiers were getting hurt and they're just like, oh, you're hurt? Well, you're out. Like, no, let's heal you up. Like, and I just saw so many things, like dozens of interactions, really small micro transactions happening, or like huge ones where I was like, this is not cool. And a lot of people tell you like, don't judge it off your first contract, do another one and like go to a new place. But I was like, I can't risk getting another leadership like this and then regretting it for 3 years. So I just bounced.
You know what's funny? Like, I work with a lot of veterans. That is the most common. And I actually did a poll, like, what's the reason that you wouldn't recommend? And they're like, leadership. That was the number one reason everyone had, like, tip of their tongue. And that's really sad because like they keep trying to pump all this money into like, how do we up recruitment? How do we this? How do we that? You make sure that you don't support and perpetuate shitty leadership, because that is why a lot of your enlisted personnel quit. And you can't do anything without enlisted personnel. They don't get paid a lot, so you might as well give them some kind of reason to. You, I always laugh because, like, I know a lot about military history. If you look back in military history, I'm talking like Revolutionary War, they loved mostly their leadership because their leadership was in the shit with them or taking it for them. That like they would put their lives on the line for their subordinates. So that is where the respect came from. Nowadays, it's kind of like, okay, you get shit detail and I'm just like, chilling. And that doesn't foster that kind of respect and that loyalty that makes people want to stay.
Yeah. And I want to touch up on two things you said. The first was that we mentioned like people being like, it was harder back in my days, so I'm going to make it difficult now. And that's kind of what it was. Like our leadership could have said at 2 o'clock, hey, you guys worked really hard. We accomplished everything we needed to. Go home and rest, because there's going to be those days where you can't go home. But I felt like our E8s or our captains who were O3s were like, in my day, we didn't get to go home early. We had to stay till 6. So like you have to stay till 6. And that was just so dumb to me. Like my 19-year-old logic was like, it doesn't make sense. Like why? And the second was the caring about soldiers, because I probably can't count on one hand how many times leadership was like, hey Justin, like how you doing? Like you okay? Like anything bothering you? Like what can we like help with? Instead, like we were in the motor pool, 115-degree heat in the summer, like
Yeah.
just profusely sweating and dying, right? And we knew our officers were like in their air conditioned offices. And, first sergeant was in his air conditioned office. And like, it would be cool if maybe once or twice they came down and they were just like, hey guys, good job. We appreciate it. But like, never.
It's like they corporatize the military, and it's weird. I mean, I can't imagine that, especially when it comes to like combat MOS. Like, how are you gonna like encourage people to go risk their lives if you're gonna be a POS? Like, I don't get it. How do you think that's gonna go well? But and there is the culture in the military that is, don't shake the apple tree, like, oh my god, retaliation, everything else. It's a problem that they're eventually gonna have to figure out because it's losing them troops and it's making people not want to reenlist. And it's disenfranchising the military because veterans don't come out and give it 5-star reviews. In fact, they go out and they're like, hey, can't recommend it. Kind of sucks. 2 out of 10 stars. And that's sad because, I come from a really long line of military personnel, like back at least in record to the Revolutionary War. So I do support the military, and I think it's a good opportunity for people. I don't think everyone should just be going to war willy nilly. I think like the discipline, the camaraderie, learning, especially learning teamwork and how your actions influence other people are really important things. But, you guys make it hard to sell. Not you, but, they make it hard to sell. Until they figure it out, it's going to be in the negatives, as far as getting people to stay.
Yeah, yeah, really good point. I mean, I don't think it's any secret. We've all seen like articles about military retention and recruitment numbers hurting. And like for me at least, it really was just supportive leadership. Like my pay was not good back then. I think as an E4 at like 3 years, I want to say it was like 20, 22 or 24 a month, which is like 600 a week. But like it wasn't even about that. You could make it work, right? It was really like just they tell you because I feel like they had to. Yeah, we're family. Like we're all brothers. When we go to Iraq or whatever, like we'll be, in the foxhole or whatever. But then I can't tell you how many of my friends got kicked out for stupid reasons. Mostly because I think in that time frame was when all the troops came back from Iraq. Obama had just pulled everybody out and we were very quote unquote overstaffed, whatever that means in the military, right? And I think they were just like mass chaptering people. But like, for example, my friend who went to Iraq and Afghanistan and was in for like 10 years was slightly overweight, but he passed his PT test with flying colors. Mm-hmm. And they gave him, what they felt was adequate time and he couldn't lose it. And then they were just like, okay, bye. And they did that for a lot of people. And then 10 years later, they're like, why is no one joining? Recruitment is so low.
And I think they might be stuck. There's like this mental thing, like, I won't tell all the military secrets. I don't need to be, neutralized. But there's this kind of like, they feel like it's back in the day where they can still keep stuff under wraps. But no, that's not how it goes. We're hyper connected now. We can talk to each other. We can be like, yeah, this actually was not how it went. My biggest frustration is they will lure in mostly these young men, and then they will be like, you're going to have all this awesome stuff. And then they're like, just kidding, bye. And that is, I mean, I feel really angry about that, obviously, but it's certainly not a wise business strategy as far as, recruitment is concerned and stuff like that, because you rely on good word of mouth to get people to go in. And it's just not going to happen. It's very, very frustrating to see. We also have very little excuse for not providing what we said we were going to provide. And I'm not talking about, putting money where we have plenty of money in this country. Okay, we'll just put it like that. Plenty of money. And there's no excuse for us to keep letting our veterans down generation after generation.
Yes. And, you mentioned generation after generation. So I have a newsletter, which is the first thing I started before like YouTube or TikTok or anything. And I have a lot of followers who are like much older vets, like 45 and up. And some of them did like 20 years and their viewpoints are very different than mine. And a lot of them will, I don't want to say defend the VA, but they'll say, back in 87 or back in 95 when I got out, it was so much worse. It was terrible. Like it's so much better now than it used to be. And that's probably true, right? I'm assuming, I would hope any organization in 10, 15 or 20 years has improved even a smidgen, right? But like, I go in there to the VA and I try not to push the boundaries, right? I'm not asking for any kind of crazy advanced treatment. Like I just want to see my primary, get medication on time, maybe see a PT, and it's tough. And the other issue is it's so dependent on your location. Like I'll see veterans say, I forgot which one, but the one in Ann Arbor, Michigan is like notoriously bad. And every review I see, veterans will be like, this place sucks. It's awful. Calls get dropped, appointments get, unscheduled, whatever. And then those people's complaints and like cries for help get like washed away by the veterans who are like, oh, well, I go to the one in Rhode Island and it's great. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I try to tell them, I'm like, guys, totally different experiences, like different staff, different leadership, different, like level of people caring. And all those complaints get washed away by a handful of good experiences. And it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, that's a very that's a thing in general. Like people don't like to talk about problems. They like to focus on the positive or whatever. When it's like, okay, what you can do is you can address a problem and you can say, here's what we're doing right, here's what we need to fix. It's very simple, but people take criticism as like a personal attack, or like they need to defend the person that's receiving criticism. And that's something that's difficult to really address, because it's a leadership culture issue. It's a country leadership issue. It comes from the top down. There was as we've been talking about this, I'm remembering a point where it's like, I feel like this is the first set of generations, for maybe like the past 2 or 3, where we have actively been like, we don't want to make the world easier for the next generation. We want them to have it as bad as us. So it's like, think back to that. If our ancestors had that idea, we'd all be in caves. Like, that's literally how that would go. So I cannot understand how we got this way. But then if you look at our politics for the past however long, many years, that's the focus. It's on consistent division. So it's like we have to be constantly disgruntled and upset. And if it's better, then it's wimpier. It's crazy, but that is what we've done. We kind of got to that point.
Yeah, that's a good point. If it's better, it's wimpier. I mean, really, I just like, I'm not like going down to DC and like speaking to, Congress or whatever to try to get things to change, but there are a lot of people that are, and like, I just don't want to be that like 70-year-old veteran who's trying to get an appointment and like the experience sucks. And like, I don't know how to use the new technology and the special app to book appointments or whatever. Like
It's terrible.
like I'm sure like I see these guys struggling in the VA now, and I see all these news articles that I read where it's like vet dies alone in the VA because of lack of care. And I'm like, dude, I don't want that to be like my generation. So like I'm trying to hopefully if I can help some people so that when they're 15 years out of the military, like their experience is slightly better. But like it's tough because I'm watching this generation actively not get good help. And I read comments where it's some super old vet and he's just like, I'm on hold 6 hours with the VA. I'm trying to get my prescription. And I'm like, why is this so difficult? Like, just give the dude his thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very tricky. The issue is, and everyone's going to hate it, but it is what it is. Veterans, because you see older veterans have to get involved in, I know it's icky, politics. Okay. So they have to go in there and they have to do it. And when they get in, they have to understand that it is not a cooperative effort. It's freaking you're always combating the other side, which is nuts and not how it should be. Getting into this, joining the civic process is the best way to get that change, and joining with other veterans. So that's why, like, Rob will come on if you want him and talk, but that I always encourage you guys to like get together, especially when you're in like that healthy mindset where you're not like screw the world, but you're at that point where you're like, okay, how do we fix this? How do we make it better? And those people finding each other is really, really important. So
Yeah, I'm in a lot of Facebook groups, like veteran support groups, military support. I mean, 99% of the population in these groups do not have any understanding of their benefits, how to use them,
it sucks.
how to even start with the VA. So like I try to help as much as possible. But yeah, it's tough. Like I'm like, did you guys just got out? Like your leadership didn't set you up or help you out? Or I view some of these recently separated veterans like resumes because they're like, I can't get a job. Can you guys help me? I'm like, this resume is not good. Like, and I know what happened, right? Because the same thing happened to me. You go through these exiting transition services and a dude who's making it has no experience in civilian work. They were in the military for 20 years, and then they got government contracting jobs. And so they're used to like either the federal resume or like they've never worked entry level in corporate.
Right.
And, I read their resumes and it's like lead junior sailors on a, like, I don't know, some Navy description of like an experience. And I'm like, nobody knows what that means. Like that
Right.
can't,
You need to translate it to civilian.
yeah.
And that's what you just touched on, is one of my biggest passions. And actually, with the organization, my job is resource management. So there's a million resources out there. Some of them aren't worth a damn, and some of them are. The ones that are usually not well known because they're too busy working to be fundraising. So those are the kinds of things that I like to try and connect with, to boost, and they are the places that really get the work done. And after this, I'll go ahead and I can send you a list of some places just so you can have it as far as employment stuff, because that's something I push for a lot. Employment is very important for most veterans getting out of service, because you can't go from working 24/7 to just having nothing to do. That's insane. Having that sense of purpose lined up is great. And there are some organizations that do just that. They translate it to civilian for you. And they're operated by veterans, but veterans who have successfully transitioned to the civilian world. So they know their P's and Q's when it comes to that stuff. But yeah, big time, big thing.
Yeah, definitely awesome. I don't want to keep you too long. Is there any last comment you just want to touch on, or?
No, I mean, I'm really excited when I get the chance to talk to someone like you or anyone kind of doing this stuff, because my big message is please work together. That's it. Like, find each other, work together, because you guys are a lot more capable of making a huge impact than you realize because of the work ethic, the ability to work with people that you can't stand, and the the efficiency, the leadership. You guys have a lot more skills than you realize that would make you just unbelievably effective in the what's called the human services space. So yeah, I hope that you guys keep doing that and you keep talking and finding each other.
And veterans should not need to do it alone. There's plenty of resources. I know a lot of pride gets in the way and ego, and they don't want to ask for help, but like, it's hard out here, especially when you've been so like stuck in not this realm for so long, and then you're just like, all right, good luck, like, figure out what to do in your free time.
And I do hope
Yeah.
that some of the, older, younger veterans or veterans that are people, active duty people that are still in, I hope that you guys come together and kind of find, even though you're not going to agree on everything, find areas where you align and start making change in those areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks so much for having me.